maybe we can start with you, Tomonari. You can talk a little bit about shooting on the Cosmo Clock Ferris wheel in Yokohama. It's an interesting sort of inversion where usually we think of a Ferris wheel as offering this broad, beautiful vista, and you sort of hint at it where we hear about Mount Fuji that's off-site, but you choose to focus on the mechanics of the machine instead. Maybe you could talk a little bit about that choice and how you made it.
Sure. Is this on? Okay. Then originally, I was thinking of shooting outside, like scenes below. But then the first time I was on the ride, then I was also using videos and test shooting. Then I found that the structure itself was interesting. Then I visited again, and next time I shot with a 60mm film, and I was focusing on this inner structure. Then third time, finally worked on this project. So that's because the structure has like a repetition, but also variation, but also this like vertical intermittent movement was I found like interesting because of the connection of that mechanism, but also the mechanism of the film projector, but also film camera, which is also intermittent too.
And maybe say a word about the sound that you use. Is it manipulated in any way?
Well, not much, but I didn't notice the first time I was inside the cabin because there's no sound. I mean, no sound from the speakers. I didn't even notice there were actually speakers. But second time, this sound of the information about the surroundings, but also this Cosmo Clock 21. Then the third time I was visiting and filming, and also the recording sound. And sometimes I could have this sound. So it depends on the cabin, like the ones you are in. So that's why I chose to have like just one part with the sound.
Questions from the audience for our filmmakers? Shay. Yes, please. Questions about 2008 Blake's film. You can speak a little bit more about what we see.
Well, there's in a way two ways of answering that question. So there's the original material, most of which are still images of cherry blossoms and flowers photographed in Japan, and also some footage in Toronto, in Ontario. But then all of the footage in the film that you see is being rephotographed off of a television screen, cathode-ray tube television screen, which I believe is one of the last actually models that was released before they discontinued releasing that technology of television screen about 10 or 11 years ago, before switching over to like LCD and plasma and LED screens. And so you get, I filmed this rephotographed the screens with GoPro cameras, which have a very high variability of frame rate, shutter speed, and of course you have the refresh rate of the television screen, which when you shift the shutter speed in different directions, it creates a phasing effect of various types, which is why you have a kind of band of the image that's scrolling upwards, always scrolling upwards. So yeah, if I was filming the flowers, then you would have this kind of sensation of the image sort of rising over it and then it disappearing, and then it comes back up and rises. And then when you see the colors, it's on the screen you would see just a full blank color field screen of whatever color, blue, red, pink, green, many different colors, and I would film it so that the band was very thin, and so that's why you end up with certain sequences in the film that have the appearance of thin lines of color that are scrolling up over the screen.
Other questions? Yes, one far in the back. Question again for Blake about the stereoscopic.
Well, there's the main bit where they're different is actually a shot towards the beginning of Lake Ontario, filmed through this kind of cabin that was on the water with two windows, and you initially have the sensation, I think, of seeing a proper stereoscopic image, but then it's revealed that you're quite zoomed in, and it's zooming out slowly and pulls back to show the actual thing. And so obviously at certain moments of that, if you close your eyes, you can see the two different windows kind of crossing each other and falling into the correct place. But also because I filmed, in order to film the screens stereoscopically, obviously I couldn't play 3D footage on the CRT televisions. And so I would have to film all of the left eye footage and then all of the right eye footage. And since I'm dealing with these scrolling lines and the phasing effect, it was always a little bit different in each eye. And so sometimes it was a little bit ahead in one eye or a little bit behind. And so there's a sense that one eye is somewhat, I guess, behind and the other one not. But most of the footage is, I believe, properly stereoscopic. Like you get, with both eyes open, you should get a kind of proper depth effect.
It's nice to hear you speak about sort of the what of what we see, whereas in your film, Burak, the film ends with, it explains what it is we've seen and what it is we've heard. But maybe you could speak a little bit about why you captured this audio and pairing it with these images that we see. Over 4 years old.
Yes. Aslında yani 4 yıl önce 2015'te seçim günü bir aslında bunun bir video olacağını da düşünmeyerek bir ses kaydı yapmak istemiştim ve arada böyle ses kayıtları yapıyorum açıkçası.
4 years. Is this on? Yeah. 4 years ago, at the election day, I did a recording of such, and I do such recordings every now and then.
Bir de o günlerde aslında bu capture ettiğim görüntüler istanbuluseyret.com'da public olarak aslında halka açık bir internet sitesinde yayınlanan görüntüler olduğunu söyleyeyim.
And the footage you see of Istanbul was broadcasted in in a website called istanbuluseyret.com, which means translates as watchistanbul.com.
Bir de yani o iktidarın kamerasıyla landscape'i geniş planda iktidarın kamerasıyla görürken aslında bir çekirdek halinin çok daha kontrast bir yerden politik olarak bir statement'ın olmasını çok güçlü bir iki materyal olarak görüyordum.
I thought it would be a very interesting thing to juxtapose these two mediums of communication, watching the footage of the city while listening to the conversations of a typical Turkish family who's going into elections together.
O görüntülerin iktidarın kamerası olması, çünkü orası belediyenin kamerası olması.
And and what you've been seeing, the footage or the film of Istanbul was by the Turkish municipal recordings. So they are not your recordings. No. It's
Bunun dışında da aslında süreçte arada kurgulamaya devam ettim ve en sonunda geçtiğimiz aylarda son bir seçim oldu. Ve o seçim sırasında da başına oturup tekrardan kurgulayıp filmi bitirdim.
Couple months back we had another election, and it was then I've decided and put it all together and came up with the last product that you have seen.
Ufak bir ekleme daha yapayım buradan. Ayrıca filmi bitirdikten sonra ve film bir yere seçildikten sonra Locarno'ya ve buraya seçildikten sonra anne babama izletip izin aldım ve onlara da teşekkür ediyorum izin verdikleri için.
I'd like to add this as well, that what you've been listening to, the voices are actually my parents, my mother and my father, and I asked them if it was okay to use this, and I'm grateful to them for their permission.
In like some of your film, the use of old technology is quite ghostly. It's haunting in a certain way. And I feel like in your film, Maureen, the use of archival material is quite evocative and quite loaded in a way. Maybe you could speak a little bit about the images, the archival images, or the text.
Yeah. Well, the film started also 4 years ago with a commission that was so I shot the eclipse on one day for the commission, and then the commission was cancelled. And so I had these images of the eclipse I had filmed, and I had this poem by Henri Michaux that I've been reading for a long time, and that I really, really love. And it was 4 years ago, few months before shooting that eclipse, I moved to Lisbon. I'm French. I was born in France, but my father is Portuguese, and I decided to go back to Portugal. So that film is my first Portuguese film. In somehow the poem, I was related to the poem like somebody say that better than me. I was working with the poem, and I found this recording by Delphine Seyrig, French actress, reading this poem for the French radio. And before the reading, she says something. She said that she chose this poem because it's hard to translate, but in French c'est cette chose que je sens qui est que je ne suis ni tout à fait d'ici, ni tout à fait d'ailleurs. So in English it will be something like, this poem is about that feeling that I have of not being really from here, nor really from somewhere elsewhere. Yeah. So that was 4 years ago, the beginning of the film. But when the commission was cancelled, I started to collect things to make this film. And during 4 years, I collected images, sounds, and I wanted to to open a game of mirrors between this viewer I had filmed in this day of the eclipse, this country that we don't know if it exists, that she talks about, and some other distant places and some other distant times. And so I started to look into archives of the beginning of the cinema and experimentation on color. And so I asked for tinted archives from the 1910, some things like that. But what you see in the beginning, and also images that used to be in color, but that people had at home, like Super 8 documentary about nature, and that were printed in very bad film stock, and so from the 60s, and so the color has been lost. So, well, I have the very beginning. Yeah, I was trying to join these things, this black and white and this color of trying to have the color in cinema and also the color that we've lost. Yeah, that's it.
I'm terribly sorry that we actually have no more time, but I can assure that everyone here is very nice and maybe we can speak more outside. On behalf of the venue staff, who are so wonderful, by the way, I think they would appreciate it if we can flip the house as quick as possible and return your 3D glasses. But before we do that, please join me in thanking again Blake Williams, Burak, Çevik, Tomonari Nishikawa, and Maureen Fazendeiro. And thank you again to Henri for her interpretation. Thank you all for coming. Hope to see you tomorrow night.